Live from SABC studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuya Mvoko. On the show tonight,
coalition is a new challenge, phenomenon in our politics, so we are grappling with that as we are maturing with our fledgling democracy.
The ANC in a fresh bid to scupper a deal the DA signed last week. Is it a plan to spoil the party or a genuine effort to finally bring stability to the Nelson Mandela Bay? We speak to the parties that will or won't make it happen. We also shine the spotlight on the violent protests that have gripped Tembisa over the past couple of days. The Watchdog starts now. Good evening. It's exactly 9 months since the local government poll that gave the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality a hung council. Since then, chaos and instability have been permanent features, both politically and administratively. Last week, following months of negotiations, the Democratic Alliance and 6 other much smaller parties signed an agreement that could see the governing coalition, currently led by the African National Congress, overthrown. The ANC has now hatched a new plan that could see it staying in power, albeit in a much diluted form, but which would also include the DA and possibly 2 other smaller parties. Here's ANC Eastern Cape Chairperson Oscar Mabuyane explaining this to me at the weekend.
We are engaging. The unfortunate part is that we are not desperate. We know Nelson Mandela people voted as less than 50 plus 1. That is simple majority. We accepted that situation. Even then, we were ready to be in the opposition banks as long as we are going to be opposing for the advancement of the transformation agenda our country has committed itself to. So we are engaging in those other parties. It's not all lost. I can tell you, coalition politics have taught us that a day is very long in coalition politics. But also we are looking at other interventions from a government point of view. We basically currently exploring Section 12, where we are trying to create a sense of stability in that space. Because this issue of coalition today, when they agree, is nice, it's all good. A few months down the line, they change. We have seen terrible things already in Nelson Mandela. The last 5 years, the last term, 2016 term, has been terrible. There's been a less movement in terms of quality service delivered to people of Nelson, simply because of this coalition arrangement. So a coalition cannot be about trade-offs just for comfort of those who are in offices. They must be about quality service to our people and service to our people. So if they are not actually doing that, it's very unfortunate. So as ANC, of course, would have loved to continue leading that coalition, and we're talking to all other parties. We're not shutting any door, and we're still open, we're engaging, and we know everything is possible. The DA has been trying, it's lucky. Even in the last term, the DA managed to squeeze in through the same arrangement. So we are not really shocked by what is happening, because we have seen it coming. We've been engaging around this. But if we disagree on fundamental issues, then hard luck. The ANC can still take the opposition banks and continue championing the interests of people of Nelson Mandela.
Section 12 means what to achieve what?
It's a model of governance. The current arrangement that is in eThekwini Metro, for instance, where you're saying all parties who have been voted in must be allowed to co-govern proportionally based on what they've been voted. So this is basically what we are working on, and so that everyone understands that you have been voted at 1%, use your 1%, at 40%, use your 40%, something like that. So far, with this current arrangement of coalition, even if you are at 0.5%, you can be majority, because you can swing votes, and sometimes other people are so impossible. Some don't even have constituencies, they were just voted because people wanted to get something new that they think that it can also help to speed up challenges that they were experiencing at that particular time. So it's one of those lessons that we're learning. Coalition is a new challenge, phenomenon in our politics, so we are grappling with that as we are maturing with our fledgling democracy. But it's an experience that we see. We are working in Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela is a very strategic municipality. It's not easy just to give up on Nelson Mandela. It's our economic hub as a province. A lot is happening there. Some very catalytic projects that are lined up for that space to develop not only people of Nelson Mandela but the entire Eastern Cape. So we are going to be really unrelenting to ensure that we work together with any other progressive parties that will still be willing, that are sharing the same common goals with us. We do have an agenda as an ANC, we do have a program as an ANC, we do have policies that we're pursuing as ANC. So any force or the paradigm shift from such kind of policies that seeks to undermine what we represent, who we are as ANC, then we'll have fundamental problems with that.
Well, the EXCO, of course, can only have a maximum of 10 members, according to legislation. While there would still be a mayor, he or she would have a very limited executive powers. Power is vested in the entire EXCO. Now, how do the parties feel about this new proposal? Will they support it? Well, Retief Odendaal is the DA's mayoral candidate in Nelson Mandela Bay. Nkoseli Jack is the leader of Abantu Integrity Movement, and according to the arrangement that his party, the DA and others signed last week, he could well be the deputy mayor. The EFF's regional chairman is Councillor Kanya, and the party is in neither arrangement, or at least not formally. And Gerifan Niekerk is the leader of the Northern Alliance. They're part of the ANC-led arrangement, but the DA has also been courting them, and last week it left the door ajar, putting seat also aside for them. Gentlemen, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. If I may start with you, Mr. Odendaal, just your thoughts around what the ANC is now saying.
Thank you and good evening, Rio. It's a pleasure being on your show. I think it's very curious that we got that notice on the very same day that a new coalition agreement has been signed. This is nothing different than an attempt of the ANC to hang on to power here in Nelson Mandela Bay. We must understand that there's a 15 billion rand budget at play. And that is the reason why the ANC wants to hang on to this council. They have failed the people of Nelson Mandela Bay. The entire administration has collapsed. As at the end of the previous financial year, at the end of June, this current administration could not even spend 67% of its capital budget, which means hundreds of millions of rands that could have been utilized to invest in capital projects will have to be sent back to the National Treasury. Our collection rate has collapsed, but we are only servicing half of the indigent individuals, households in Nelson Mandela Bay. 3 years ago, there were 108,000 poor households in Nelson Mandela Bay, and today we are only servicing 54,000 of those households with free basic services due to the inability of the ANC to deliver services. So we are very clear. The ANC must go, and we will reject this notice with the contempt it deserves, and we'll take the MEC to court if we have to do it. We will fight for the people of Nelson Mandela Bay, and we will not allow the ANC to keep us at ransom any longer.
Nkoseli Jack, what is your standpoint on this one?
Our aim is definitely going to vehemently reject this ANC lifeline to political power. And we think that this is really flagrant interference in whatever way you look at it. And it's so sad that actually the ANC is using the model of the pigs in Animal Farm. When the laws don't suit you, you change them, etc., etc. I mean, just look at the spurious reasons behind the whole thing that have been tabulated by the MEC. Actually, he did not have any thinking about what he wanted. He just copied and pasted what we were saying about the dysfunctionality of the coalition and the government here since the 16th of March this year, when the coalition partners disagreed with the ANC on the appointment of a municipal manager. From that point,
but there's nothing illegal about this arrangement. It's provided for. I mean, it's happening in quite a number of municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal, for example.
Well, Vuyo, just look at the Eastern Cape, okay? Take it from Umzimkulu and up to the Blaukrans River, and you can travel up to Grafreinet, the other corner of this province. There is a total destruction of local government, administration, and political instability, and financial non-viability as a consequence of poor management. The people who cause that, can you trust them that they can do anything better here? Now, they certainly cannot, because what they are doing, this is power grab, nothing less, nothing more.
Kanyang Leisure, what's the EFF's view?
I can tell you very much now that is not going to happen. Hell will freeze over before that happens, because you cannot just wake up and decide to implement Section 12 just because you feel like you are under politically. And that is what the ANC wants to do. Their behavior is tantamount to that of political intents, because there's a process to follow before you do that type of a thing. And it was very strategic of them that on the day that there was a press conference and they heard that they are going to be removed out of political power, all of a sudden they want to implement the Section 12. It's a desperate attempt from them to retain political power at all costs. The ANC has caused this self-destruction themselves. They've got themselves to blame. Even the issues or the reasons that they've named there on that Section 12 notice as the reasons to want to use to implement this Section 12 was caused by themselves. For instance, I'll give you a typical example, Vuyo. On the 16th of March, there was a council meeting where democracy was suppressed, where a voting count was deliberately misled, and we've got evidence and proof of that. And thereafter, they then decide to appoint a city manager whilst there was no quorum, causing an utter chaos within that particular council meeting. So they've got no respect for democracy, which democracy was fought for, by the way, and they want to retain political power at all costs, because we must be a people that even if you lose, but if democracy permits that you lose, then you must accept, because the numbers are not in your favor. It cannot be that you want to even commit criminal activities, because it's a fraud to misrepresent the outcome of a council meeting by misleading people in terms of numbers. So this Section 12 that they want to implement, it's simply a desperate attempt to retain political power at all costs, and we are not deterred by it in any way, because we know that there are certain processes and procedures which you need to follow and assist the municipality in retaining stability before you can even go to that particular direction.
Gary van Niekerk, I'm assuming that you also hold the same position the three other parties hold. The question then becomes, what needs to happen now? Because it's been 9 months since elections, and there's hardly been any movement. The people there are suffering while the political parties are busy bickering. Please unmute. Okay, we can hear you now. Yes, yeah, you can continue, Gary.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thanks for having me on your show, Vio. I think we all trying to make political speeches over here while Rome is burning. The question that we should be asking is, what got us to this point? And the lack of accountability in the last 9 months is what got us here. We need to sit around the table, all political parties, and examine ourselves very closely and admit our shortcomings. We have failed the residents of this metro. I'm ashamed to say that I'm a member of this council. And going forward, there is a solution to the problem. It's just that with this declaration, this Section 12 wanting, the MEC wanting to implement the Section 12, it's trying to solve a problem, but it's not going to solve the problem. We need to address ourselves, measure ourselves, hold ourselves accountable. That is the problem in this metro, and that is why there's no service delivery in this metro. This metro is a mess. It's a complete mess. We have failed the people of this metro, and we can correct it. The ANC can correct themselves, but they need to take a really hard look at themselves, what they've done in the last 9 months up until now. And this is where the mayor comes in. The mayor needs to hold herself to account as to what happened the last 9 months.
Well, let's talk about, let's stop political speeches, as you said. Let's be practical about it. What, for you, Gary, is the way forward? What needs to happen? What do you mean when you say people must sit around the table to do what?
If you look at what's going to happen going forward for you, we as the current coalition, we haven't engaged each other at all. For the last 3, 4, 5 months, we haven't spoken to each other at all. So this coalition, the current ANC coalition of which the Northern Alliance forms part of, we need to engage with the ANC and the other smaller parties that form part of this coalition. And from that, and that includes, for example, a party like the EFF, who's neither with the DA or the ANC. From that, if we put the citizens of this metro first, we can find solutions to the problem, and we can deliver services to the metro.
If push comes to shove, Gary, and you have to choose between your current partners, the ANC, or go with the other coalition that's led by the DA, which one are you staying with your current arrangement, or are you prepared to move?
Thanks for the question, Vio. That's a very nice one. If you look at the DA currently, the DA they've got this attitude where they want to govern like they have won this election outright, like they feel they've got 50% plus one. But the DA only has 48 seats. That's very far from the 61 required. And they feel that they need to have mayor and speaker. Now, for us, that's a big problem. We need to hold ourselves accountable. There's a good example of what happened in the last council meeting, where 2 motions never saw the light of day, simply because the speaker refused to table those motions. On the side of the ANC, if you look at the last 9 months, what's happened, the ANC needs to correct itself. And if they don't want to correct themselves, we will correct them. But it's a case of where they rather try to sideline you completely, like they did with the Northern Alliance over the last 3, 4 months. We went in and out of court. And we need to sit down. The funny part about the DA, in your introduction, you said that the DA is keeping a seat for the Northern Alliance, but they haven't called us, they haven't spoken to us. So the whole consultation, negotiations, none of that is taking place. We read about it in the newspaper, and I've heard some of the other parties even complaining about it, where they feel that they can go it alone. It's the first time I've heard of people celebrating a takeover of a government, but they only have 56 signatories to this new coalition government.
Retief, before I come to you, I just want to be clear on the EFF's standpoint first, and I would want you to then answer or speak to what Gary has just said and what Kanya will say. Kanya, where do you stand? Which, of these coalition arrangements are you likely to throw your weight behind?
Well, we are very clear, Vuyo, that the ANC has to go. It has created this chaos. They cannot be trusted to lead any government, because we are in this mess because of them. And I've already cited some of the instances that have taken place in relation to that. What needs to happen now? The DA wants to take over this government of ours, and they've already went to a press conference and pronounced as to who they want to be mayor, speaker, and so on and so forth. of which that is a very wrong process to follow, because before you enter into such a thing, you need to consult with political parties that will be able to assist you to achieve your end goal. You cannot just go and pronounce with 56 seats and say that you're going to take over government. For instance, Helen Ziller, the leader of the DA, was personally involved week in, week out, and dealing with the negotiations in terms of how these coalition agreements are going to work. The decent thing, courteous thing to do is for her to have contacted the national leadership of the EFF, because we are a central command. As the EFF, all powers are taken at central level. They know that. But they operate with a sense of arrogance that they think that the EFF will always support the DA no matter what. So there needs to be a consultation that takes place at a national level, because we cannot just act on ourselves at a regional level without them consulting the national leadership as well into what type of an agreement we are going to enter into. Because our votes also are going to be there. If they are there, we then need to have a say in terms of what is going to happen. I can tell you now, for instance, just by sight alone, that if you say the DA wants to take mayor and speaker, those are two very powerful positions. Because if you obtain the speaker position, for instance, and there are critical motions that you want to have passed or to be tabled in council, and the speaker decides not to table them, those motions will not see the light of day. Hence, that particular position is very, very critical. We are not saying that we are interested in the speaker position, but we are saying that where it starts, there needs to be a consultation. But to answer you is that we are clear that the ANC needs to go because of the way that they've behaved. They've self-destruct, and they are dishonest, they are disingenuous, they cannot be trusted. However, we cannot enter into any form of agreement or working together with any political party until there's respect and there is some form of consultation process that takes place. The DA consulted with AIM, they consulted with Freedom Fund Plus. For what particular reason that they would say to themselves that they're not going to consult with the EFF, only God knows. It can only be arrogance and a sense of not one or an ego type of an issue that stops them from doing that. So that needs to be put aside. Okay. If they're interested in wanting to save the city, they need to put aside their ego and talk to the leadership, and then we can be able to get a way forward.
Retief, egotistic, arrogant, you don't consult, you bully everyone.
Well, I'm very happy that I wasn't part of the coalition discussions, and it was done at another level. But I think that the point is well made in that political parties need to put their differences aside, and we all need to work together. Even if we're not in a coalition, put the interests of our people in Nelson Mandela Bay that's currently suffering first. So I want to make it very clear that this new coalition will work with absolutely everybody, even those parties that we are not in a coalition government, because I think that people across the political spectrum are absolutely tired of political parties bickering and not getting on with the job and delivering services.
But can you,
so in terms of what the...
If you're being practical about this, I mean, you have around, what, 56? You need 60 plus 1. So how are you going to get there? How are you going to break the impasse? Because you keep on arguing. I mean, it has taken months, for example, for you to agree with the aims and everyone else. But it still hasn't taken you very far in the sense that you still don't have the 50 plus 1. So something has got to give for the sake of the people of that region.
Well, just remember that you don't need a majority in council to get a motion of no confidence passed. You just need a simple majority. But I do believe what the EFF has mentioned is important, and the fact that it was made very clear that we're not in a coalition. But that doesn't preclude us from talking to one another. And I believe that those discussions will happen.
But you've been talking for months, and this is really, I mean, my point. We've been talking for months, and as things stand, you are nowhere near achieving what you would like to achieve. So aren't you going back to, or have you not? I mean, you're supposed to have done that already, like gone back to the drawing board and said, realistically, this is how we can move forward, and we may have to make some sacrifices.
Well, yes, absolutely. But one must also remember that the hard work was actually to form a coalition. Remember that there's other parties that don't want to be in a coalition. They don't mind necessarily working with us to remove the ANC, but they're not interested in being with the DA in a coalition or any of the other parties in a coalition. And that's the point that we have to remember. In order to just get a viable coalition together, there was a lot of hard work that had to go into negotiating with other parties regarding principle and turnaround strategies for this municipality. And that hard work was put in. And we believe there will now be further engagement with other political parties. And we are very confident that the opposition parties in council are united in one thing, and that is that the ANC must be removed in Nelson Mandela Bay. We've seen how they've stumbled around with this drought crisis, with many of our communities without water on a daily basis. We've seen how critical service delivery has come to a grinding halt, how we've been unable to spend our grant funding. And at the end of the day, people want to see change. So I'm very surprised when I listen to Mr. Van Niekerk saying that he's part of the current coalition, but they haven't been able to move for months or to meet for months and to deal with government issues. The mayoral committee is not meeting on a weekly basis. They haven't met for months. The entire administration has come to a grinding halt, and that is why the ANC needs to to be ousted in Nelson Mandela Bay, because they do not have the interest of our people at heart, and we are all united in getting rid of them.
How is this impasse going to be broken? Because I'm hearing the same things over and over again, and no, clear a way forward.
Vuyo, I am confident that now that the deliberations have been taking place over time and there were some gaps in between, we are working very hard in attempting to rectify some of the missteps along. And I am confident that in the next few days, everything might be sorted out. But it's a process that we are engaging in of trying to do the best we can. And I am confident that, yes, it was it wasn't because of the intensity and the complications of these negotiations. There were missteps here and there, and amongst them are really to invest a lot of time in keeping all national leaders of the parties that were involved, particularly the EFF. And I think that from our side and the other parties have been talking a whole lot now in the light of that. We saw that, and we are working on it.
But what are those missteps, just to take you back?
No, for example, I was referring specifically to the fact that what Kanya says is perfectly correct, and there's no quarrels about it. And I think all of us, we have looked at it, and we have decided that yes, that will be rectified, and proper respect will be given to all the people who will make this mission of uprooting the ANC out of the taking it out far away from the 15 billion expenditure of the metro, because it's critical.
Kanya, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a numbers game. I mean, you've got to decide whether you are giving this coalition your numbers, and whether in fact that then would solve the problem. How do you propose to move forward, notwithstanding the issues that you say you have with the Democratic Alliance?
Well, we are not emotional as the EFF. We want the best interest for the people of Nelson Mandela Bay. So we are not ruled by emotion, in spite of the unfortunate events that has taken place. Because really, we cannot hear through a media that the DA wants to remove the ANC out of political power, and automatically we're expected that we are going to go in blindfolded without any consultation process and support that. It's never done. So that needs to be rectified, and then we can only move from there. And I raised a very critical point that they must understand that the EFF is led through Central Command. So,
well, in the same, I mean, my understanding is that the reason Helen Zille was leading the talks is precisely because the federal executive of the Democratic Alliance is the one that takes decisions on these matters. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Retief.
Exactly. So if they understood that, they should also understand that in the EFF, there's a central command team that takes a decision. Therefore, clearly, our votes are needed in order to achieve the 50% plus one to uproot the ANC out of political power, because that is the common goal that all of us have. Therefore, just as much as there was consultation with AIM, ACDP, Freedom Front Plus at a national level, they should have put the ego aside and consulted with the national leadership of the EFF without being emotional. Because you need to put emotions aside about how we differ in terms of policies and our beliefs and our cardinal pillars as the EFF. We agree in terms of the common goal, but there needs to be a consultation with the national leadership of the EFF so that we can be able to move forward and deal with this highest level of kleptocracy constantly being performed by the ANC.
We're going to take a quick ad break, and after the break, you need to come back, Retief, and explain what your party's position or attitude is towards the EFF, which can give you the numbers, but which, as I say, they are not really married to any idea. If they get consulted or a case is presented, they are prepared to listen to that, or whether, in fact, the reason you haven't done so is because of those principles that Helen Zille spoke about the last time she was here. But we're taking a break also because we want to bring in, we had extended an invitation to the ANC. No one was available, but we understand someone is available now and is going to join the conversation in a moment. Welcome back, and if you've just joined us, the ANC is in a fresh bid to scupper a deal the DA signed last week. The question we are asking this evening is whether it is a plan to spoil the DA party or a genuine effort to finally bring stability to the Nelson Mandela Bay. We've been speaking to the DA, the EFF, the Northern Alliance, and AIM, but we are now joined by the ANC. We had extended an invitation earlier, but no one was available at the time. Luyolo Ngagula, the regional secretary of the ANC, is on the line. I don't know if you've been following the conversation, Luyolo, and what you make of what the parties have had to say.
Unfortunately, Putvuyo, I've not been following the conversation fully, as I've just come out of a meeting. I did indicate to your team that unfortunately your set time did coincide with a prior arranged and very important meeting.
Okay. Now, these political parties are united in wanting the ANC out, because they believe you are a stumbling block to service delivery and to things going the way they should in that part of our country. Now, in terms of the new proposal, earlier on, right at the beginning of the program, I played a clip of an interview I had with the provincial chairperson, Oscar Mabuyana, when I caught up with him at the ANC's policy conference at the weekend, where in a nutshell he said that they are supporting the idea of an executive committee to run the metro. Why now? And why do you think this is going to solve the problems you've not been able to solve over the past 9 months?
Well, I think it becomes important for us to continue to raise the point that we've always done in your platforms, that one, the electorate in Nelson Mandela did not give any single political party the overwhelming majority in order for it to be the absolute political authority in this particular space. I think that's the first point that we must make. And that number two, the African National Congress, collectively with some of the participants in the show, led a process, of setting up one of the best coalition models in theory, which was hailed as a best model across the country, but in practice it would prove to be something else. And that was precisely informed by the fact that coalition agreements are not legally enforceable, whereby you would have deviations, from political parties in terms of what they are penned their signatures next to. So that's part of the situations and predicaments that we're confronted with. And probably what the Premier, who's also the provincial chairperson of the ANC, was articulating to yourself was informed by the fact that now government is concerned at all spheres, with the level of instability in Nelson Mandela Metro, with the collapse of governance, which is not, necessarily, which is as a consequence of the political parties in the main. And these are efforts which are aimed at trying to rescue the residents of Nelson Mandela Metro, and ensure that service delivery does not get compromised. If anything, it is a fallacy and far from the truth that it is the African National Congress which militates, the collapse of service delivery, because it is the African National Congress, which has been consistent in applying, or abiding by the set principles which have been communicated to the public in terms or in line with the coalition agreement itself. But it has been the other political parties, mainly parties such as AIM of Bracosta, who have been part of certain due processes which seek to stabilize both the political and the administrative environment of the institution without raising any substantive issue, any legal issue, but define themselves outside of those particular outcomes because they are quite opportunistic in their nature and they're quite parasitic. So that is what we're confronted with here. And the fact is that no matter what coalition agreement may be signed, it's not legally enforceable. So,
okay, allow me to chip in for a second. Gary is part of your arrangement. To use a word he used, he's ashamed of calling himself, a member of that coalition or arrangement, precisely because he feels you haven't done the things you are saying you are committed to as the ANC. That should be an indictment on you.
Well put for you. Let's put facts on the table here, because the albatross in this particular coalition's neck has been the critical issue which you've invited us as the ANC to this particular platform before, of the city manager. Let's put facts on the table. Let the other parties raise facts around the process which was followed. Let the other parties raise facts around why it is there's a fundamental disagreement with the outcome of that particular process. Let's be substantive, let's be legal in our approach, and let's say this is where it got wrong, this is where it was gotten right. So the fact here is that, this situation has compromised the residents of Nelson Mandela, particularly in the main. That is why, as the ANC, we continue to engage. Even the parties themselves trying to appeal to their conscience that at the center, the apex priority must be the residents of Nelson Mandela, because in reality, as the ANC, we are cognizant of the fact, and I reiterate this fact, that we did not win elections and will endeavor as the ANC, whether be it we are leading a coalition, whether be it we're in the opposition benches as the African National Congress, that services do reach our people, because the reality is that in Nelson Mandela Metro, that the majority of the wards are ANC-led wards, and that's where we have to provide, an accountability to residents of this metro. Some of these other parties do not have, I will not call it a privilege, but that responsibility of providing an account to constituencies. That is why some of them, would be free, to engage in this particular jostling, because they do not account anywhere. Outside of Feather Market Hall, outside of the council chambers, they do not go to any ward to provide an account, whether it be around issues of potholes, around, issues of refuse collection, around issues of housing, around issues of water. And those are all issues which are affected by the political instability, which we as the African National Congress are endeavoring, in terms of trying to resolve and finding whatever means possible so as to get to the resolution around some of these issues, because at the center, our apex priority remains the ratepayers of Nelson Mandela.
Okay, I'm Kuseli Jack. I mean, I don't know why it says you're opportunistic and parasitic, but I'm sure you can tell us why, or what frustrated you, or why you decided to opt out of their coalition arrangement and now join this other one.
Yeah, look, I mean, Vuyo, Mr. Ngagula is the Pope of the current political instability in the metro, basically. I am surprised that he can talk with a straight face to the nation like that and not actually point to his own actions of literally destroying the coalition government piece by piece. He is central to that.
What did he do?
Last meeting, he would have had with what is called the political command, whatever committee that we have. It was PMC. It was around about maybe days before or a day before the 16th of March when that vote was taken in council. Ever since, he has never sat in a single meeting with the partners, which he was supposed to be leading. Now, what they have done, when the problem started after that issue of the is correct that this coalition we had was functioning, was doing things, was cleaning the city, was doing a lot of good by all councillors supporting the mayor the ANC gave us. All of us were fully behind the mayor and supporting the mayor. And Mr. Ngagula is well aware of that. But the trouble started when he differed with us on the or nothing approach that he took. And from then onward, it was kicking the speaker, our speaker, that is Gary, who's no speaker to him anymore. And the NA councillors taken off the payroll and a whole host of other things. They were punitive measures they took. All of that created the current problem there
Why did it do that?
Mike.
Yeah? Please unmute, Riolo.
Am I audible now, Vuyo?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Why did you treat your partners like that?
Well, Vuyo, George Orwell always reminds us that telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And I think that is something, in his other life that Ubra Costa should have been familiar with, because he was a person whom at some point some of us looked up to. But here are the facts, outside of the innuendo that Bracosta is giving us here. In relation to the very same process, which I am saying has been an albatross on the neck of the coalition. One, the meeting that he makes reference to, what Bracosta does not tell this particular nation is that they requested the African National Congress to engage in an illegal process, and we declined as the African National Congress on that particular question. What Bracosta does not say to this particular nation is that he was part of a process which was recruiting, interviewing, and produced a report around the question of the city manager. around what Prakusa does not say is that when he speaks of this decision in terms of agreeing with us, there is nothing that the African National Congress will agree to which is outside the confines of the law, because the African National Congress is engaged in a process of renewing itself. The African National Congress, part of the tenets of renewal is taking decisions which are consistent with the law. So what we will never subscribe to is illegality. And that is what Prakusta wanted us to subscribe to. So he's correct, we did not agree. We did not agree as the African National Congress with breaking the law. We did not agree with a disregard of the rule of law. Because as the African National Congress, we are engaged in a process of renewal, and as I've said, and part of that is putting the people at the center and people first. So there must not be such a claim from Prakusta, and we've endeavored, and we still continue to endeavor to not only engage Prakusta and his political parties and many other political parties to show them that there's no other conclusion that the African National Congress can sensibly arrive at which is outside the confines of the law.
Okay.
If the implications for that, for the African National Congress, is that it then must disabuse itself with whatever semblance of political power which exists in the context of a coalition arrangement, then the African National Congress will go to the gallows with its own head held up very high, because it would have assumed a very principled posture and a position around this particular issue.
Okay, we've seriously run out of time. I even had to cancel the second conversation we were supposed to have on the show this evening. Very quick answers to each one. One, Luyolo, the fact of the matter is that it's a numbers game at the end of the day, and it doesn't look like you're going to get those numbers. Doesn't look like most of the parties are keen on this executive committee arrangement. Now what?
Well, what I can say for you, A, is too long in coalition politics. Even Prakusta knows that, but as a matter of principle, whatever it becomes the final determination, our residents is the priority. We want to ensure that we are able to stabilize this particular city so as to open up, the environment in order for there to be investment into the city, because it is the African National Congress, with this particular coalition collective, which has been at the center of investment into this city, and we want to continue with those particular endeavors. We'll continue engaging, but we will not compromise on the questions of legality. We will not compromise on the ANC questions of integrity.
Ratif, are you prepared to, for example, go with the numbers that you have, even though they are not giving you the majority that you need, if it means, going to the EFF, for example, to persuade them to, go with you?
Well, we made it very, very clear that we're going to work with all political parties in council, all opposition political parties.
Why didn't you speak to them then?
At hand. Sorry?
Why didn't you speak to the EFF? Why didn't you reach out to the EFF?
Well, we were never going to be in a coalition with the EFF, so it would make no sense to talk to them about a coalition agreement. There's no problem speaking to them about supporting a motion of no confidence, and we'll speak to other parties as well. But there was no need to speak to the EFF on forming a coalition government. Yes, maybe it was an oversight of not informing them quicker or earlier that we are proposing to remove the ANC. But I'm pretty sure that we're all in agreement that the ANC must go. Service deliveries come to a grinding halt, and we are confident that we will get the numbers to remove this ailing and failing government in Nelson Mandela Bay.
Kanya, it's, you want the ANC out, but the DA doesn't seem to keen, if I listened carefully to what Ratif had to say. What are you going to do?
Yeah, no, well, I was just listening to Ngakula and his beautiful English, and we must just never allow ourselves to be misled by Ngakula, because he will dribble you with that English of his. But if you listen very carefully, the reason why that coalition failed, by the way, was because he was absent. Costa says it very clearly that he was the chair of that PTC, that structure. PMC, yeah, that structure that they had formed. He was a political tourist. He was a leader of a campaign of his provincial faction, which lost dismally, by the way. That is why that thing collapsed. He was never there. He was never present. That is why it collapsed.
Okay.
And so you cannot expect something to be successful while the leader of it is nowhere to be seen. The reality, Vuyo, is that the ANC has failed, and I've cited you plenty, 2 examples of how the ANC has misled us. I've cited an example of a meeting of the 16th of March.
I've got to come in there. I've got to come in there.
When numbers were pronounced wrongfully. And we as the EFF even went and opened a criminal case of fraud regarding that. Ngakula knows this. And there was a meeting where there was no quorum, where they elected a city manager, flouting the processes of democracy.
Okay.
And these are the things that they hide from the masses. They do not want to accept democracy. They do not want to accept when they are under, when they do not have numbers, and accept that they don't have numbers and allow democracy to prevail. We are ready to remove the ANC out of political power, and we'll do it properly through democracy.
Okay.
However, we are saying strongly that the DA must consult with the leadership so that we can be able to have a view as the EFF as to what must happen going forward. We are not going to go blindfolded as if we are not thinkers. We are thinkers, revolutionary thinkers. So we must be taken into confidence through the national leadership.
Gary, you could cost me my job, but I've got to give you, even if it's 10 seconds, just last words from you. We've seriously run out of time.
Thank you. What needs to happen here is that a party like the DA, they need to put stability before positions. They want positions at all costs. They've got 8 positions currently out of the possible 14 positions. They started off initially with our negotiations, where they said the position of speaker will belong to the Northern Alliance. In the second last meeting, they changed that position, where they said no, they want both mayor and speaker. These are the kind of things. Retief says that he wasn't part of the negotiations. I was part of the negotiations. I can tell him what transpired in those meetings. In that meeting, it was stated very clearly by Helen Zeller that she refuses to speak to the EFF. I tried to encourage her to speak to the EFF. I tried to encourage her to speak to the DOP. I tried to encourage her to speak to the Good Party in order to get to the 61. Nope. That kind of arrogance is what leads to this kind of instability. And they very hypocritical in saying that they want a stability in this metro, but they want to come and celebrate taking over a government with only 56 seats. Well,
let's leave it there for tonight. Let me thank all of you for agreeing to come on the program this evening. Clearly, we're nowhere near achieving stability and certainty in the Nelson Mandela Metro. We'll see how this pans out, but at some point someone has to take responsibility. We hope that these political parties will see reason, will realize that it's not them as political leaders and their parties who are suffering. It's actually the more than 1.2 million South Africans who live in that part of our country. That's our program for tonight. Apologies for the second part we couldn't bring you. We hope to bring you that conversation tomorrow. Have a good night.